Many people were starving in past lives. Very often in a present life, those people may feel they need to eat more. They may feel they have to literally pad themselves. They would do this unconsciously because it would be a carryover. And therefore, in this present life, they can't get enough food to sort of compensate for that time.
I remember one day when I was having a past life regression, I slipped back into another scene where I was a Native American in this past life as well. And I was a young man, about 23, and I recall that I had been a bit of a radical within this community and was challenging some of the existing beliefs of the tribe that I was a part of. I remember myself tensing up and becoming very defensive, almost as if I wanted to protect my body. Well, as I was doing this, the scene unfolded, and I saw myself with the tribe being burned upside down, which was bad enough. If I had been dead, it would have been upsetting enough, but I was alive at the time. And so ever since then, since I had that experience, I became aware of my sensitivity to touch. It was probably, my guess was about 300 years ago, and it was a fairly cold environment. It was night, and so I'm not sure the exact location, but I know it was North America, somewhere perhaps on the Canadian-United States border. I had a group of people that I had trusted, and for whatever reason I'd been betrayed, and they had explained the information, the teachings I was propounding or proposing to the other members in the tribe, and basically turned me in. Clearly, being 23 and being very aware of the fact that you're being burned alive for beliefs that you have has a lasting impression upon your psyche, as well as your body.
I found myself going back to a very primitive existence. I lived in a tree, or sort of a tree house, and it wasn't even a house. It was just being in this very high tree with a few other people, but we looked more ape-like, and yet we were still very human. Below us were creatures that looked like apes that were trying to get at us, and they were beating the trunk of the tree and trying to get us down. The only thing that really seemed to save us at that time was the fact we had fire, and we kept warding them off with firebrands. So I asked Roger Wolger in that class when that happened to me what that was about, and he said that often happens to people, that they may go to a very primitive existence. Not everybody has that happen, but it is more frequent than most people would believe.
There are various ways that a person who's conducting past life regression can obtain the regression. One way is a hallway technique, where the person is asked to, first of all, relax, and then go down this hallway and open these doors. And at the last door, opening a door to the past. There's also the elevator technique, which is very common and also very common in hypnosis, to have the person go into an elevator or go down steps and then get them feeling they're going deeper and deeper and deeper, and then go into the regression. Another method that is sometimes used is called a time machine, where a person will first of all go back in the present life and view certain or feel certain events that had taken place. They may start with teenage and then go back to childhood and then to birth and then to pre-birth and then go back to the past. That could be used as a time frame for the person, and they feel more comfortable going in that manner. Another one is it's called the mirror technique, and this is a little different from any of the regression techniques. The person would be seated in front of a large mirror with 2 candles on each side, and would sit and stare into the mirror, and it's usually in a darkened room. This may evoke images for the person, and as the person sees these images, they begin to get visions or views of past life experiences. Sometimes they actually see, I know this sounds a little unusual, they actually see a person in that mirror,
Typically, I'll go anywhere from 1 to 3 lives with an individual. And for many people, they'll take one lifetime, and there'll be so much information that will come for that lifetime that will pretty much consume the entire session. So it's very important to make sure the person doesn't feel the pressure of time. And also as a therapist, if a person, for whatever reason, will get into an emotional space with a past life, you have a responsibility to stay with them until they work it through, or you feel they can be brought back to a state of consciousness or awareness where they're stable and ready and they're integrated, so they can go back into their daily lives.
There was secrecy about his entering the room. Mm-hmm. He didn't want the others to see.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want him to love you?
Yes and no.
Mm-hmm. You have doubts.
Mm-hmm.
No attraction to him?
He's funny. He's smart. He's charismatic. He likes books. I like books. He can see the humor in things, in life. He's passionate. I don't always trust him.
Mm-hmm.
I want to trust him, but I'm feeling badly about this person that he's engaged to.
Yes.
I don't think he's being fair to her or to me. I want to believe what he tells me, but I'm just not quite sure.
Mm-hmm. How did you meet?
My brother.
Mm.
He's wearing a uniform. They are military people of some sort. It's navy blue. I see gold buttons on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's 1900s. It's very recent. It's the music. I recognize the music.
Mm-hmm.
It's like swing music. It's like big band.
20s, perhaps.
For some reason, I'm getting like a sound signal that this could be France, but in certain ways that doesn't make sense to me.
It is not necessary that the person actually know the time frame. They could take a guess at it from looking at the costumes that people are wearing and or the exact location. But they certainly know whether it's, good weather.
I just don't want him to keep talking to me about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to go back out.
He's upsetting you?
He's just making me scared about the future and what's to come, and I really don't want to think about that now. And so I'm starting to head for the door. He says to be careful that no one sees me as I leave the room. I don't want him to see how it affects me. And I can see through a crack in the door, I can see people dancing and laughing and smoking and drinking. And I look to see that it's okay for me to slip out.
On a curiously related subject, if you are of an Eastern frame of mind, there is this thing called karma.
Karma is an Eastern term implying right thinking. It has something in common with the Western notion of sin, in that it can and will be weighed against you on your deathbed, or so some would believe. What is different about it than sin is that there is no judgment put into play by a serious and threatening God. Rather, karma is just a mirror effect and answers to the call of, as ye sow, so ye shall reap. Whatever deeds you do, whatever energy you send out into the world, will inevitably come back to you. Karma is a metaphysical law of balance. Karma, like water, seeks its own level. That means if you spent a life doing good deeds, good will be returned to you. If you spent your life being evil, your future will be filled with evil. This stretches across time periods and lifetimes, according to Eastern mystics. For it was recognized not every ne'er-do-well can be seen being given his just deserts within the present life. And there may be some wishful thinking of the downtrodden on this part. But perhaps it all applies to the next life. If you were a murderer in this life, maybe you will be murdered in the next. If you were a terrorist this time around, the next life may be all victimization for you. And if you happen to have been Mother Teresa, next time will be all gravy. So by this thinking, if you want to start healing your various pasts and help out your future lives, spend the rest of this one being a shining example of goodness. Question: how accurate is the idea of karma? Answer: karma is a balance of energy. Often, karma is played out in a person's life. What you put out returns to you, whether in a big or small way. Sometimes you are returning another person's karma to them. Karma is a means of learning proper actions. When one passes on, they review their life in detail. They not only view their actions, but also view the impact and feel the emotions which their actions caused others. The spirit can then judge itself.
What they're kind of showing me is that it's sort of like when you see movies where, you know, like the spies have gone on a mission and then they like have done a debriefing session afterwards, that it's kind of like that. It's kind of like, okay, you went down there on a mission, let's look at everything that happened. It's kind of like the debriefing session after each life. But that, you know, let's say you did something really crummy to somebody, you see how your actions affected that person, how you made them feel, okay, and you feel what they felt. See, so this is also another part of karma. Not that you necessarily are going to get back in your lifetime what you sent out, but in the afterlife you certainly are going to feel the effects of your actions, whether for good or bad.
Question: are there any cultures that have a more accurate understanding of life after death than others? Answer: Eastern cultures and American Indian, along with old Celtic and ancient Egyptian cultures.
Then I'm in this room. I'm in the room and it's just filled with people and it's filled with noise and I hear somebody's yelling my name. I turn around. It's my brother. And he asks me where I've been. And I just tell him I needed to get some fresh air. And then he says, dance with me. And I tell him I don't really want to dance right now. But he grabs me anyway, and there we are. We're out there on the floor. He's laughing. He's trying to get me to laugh. And now the light, everything has gone out. The lights are out. Everything's out.
Something happened.
And I hear bombs going off. Glass is breaking and people are screaming and my brother grabs me and he looks for something for us to hide under, like a table, or I can still hear bombs outside. I don't think the bombs have hit where we are directly, but people are still panicked and screaming and scared.
Do you recognize anyone else?
Friends. People my age. My brother's talking about taking me, trying to leave the building and taking me to my parents' home so that he can get with his battalion, or he feels an urgency. And we're looking for, because it's very dark and there's people everywhere, and we're looking for the way out, to get out. And he finds a door. And when we walk outside, it's almost like looking at firecrackers. The sky is lit up here and there. And it's very close. He says it's very close. We need to get to safety. This is now a direct direct attack on our city. I hear sirens. We're running and I take my shoes off. We're running off a main street into a more deserted area. Now it feels more country, like dirt road. There's a dirt road. We can't go back to our parents' house.
Not safe.
It's not safe to go there. So we're actually leaving the town. My brother's thinking that some of our relatives in another area might live in a safer part. I know that he won't leave until he knows that I'm safe. He takes care of me in certain ways, but I take care of him in others.
Oh, of course. How do you care for him?
He takes care of me physically. I take care of him emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And I still hear and see the bombs going off. It does seem a little farther away now. We seem to be out.
Many people have had hundreds of past lives, and it depends upon exactly which ones come up. Now, we don't necessarily pick and choose. It's a spontaneous thing. The kind of life that comes up, it's not necessarily, oh, I'm going to lie down, I'm going to do this past life. It also could be more spontaneous for people. People could be walking out in a parking lot and have a spontaneous past life. You could have this in a daydream as you're walking around, or you can experience something. For example, some person went to a museum and immediately had a reaction from looking at some museum piece that they had lived at that time, and they had actually had something similar in their hands or in their life.
Everybody wants to go back and again find the glory that they were some king or queen or priest or priestess, but the truth of it is many of us have had wonderful lifetimes like that where we evolved into very wise positions in society. However, on the other hand, a lot of the times we were scoundrels and we weren't very nice people. We did very mean, dastardly kinds of things. And so maybe people were murderers or robbers or burglars, and they did things that were very, very hurtful. So the current psychological and physical dilemmas that they're having have their basis in things that they did that were very, very hurtful in that past life. So during the course of the past life, what we do is we help them get in touch with that part of themselves, help them understand that that was a past life that they had, that they're literally paying for it now, but there's a way to heal it so it doesn't have to be an ongoing traumatic type of experience for them. People, for example, that have sexual difficulties, we find that they were ritualistically, physically, or sexually abused in a past life, and so they will go back, and so you take some of the common problems that people have, like frigidity in women or premature ejaculation in men, can have its roots in a past life kind of an experience, where if a child is being ritualistically abused, they will quickly get over the sexual part of it so that it can be done, so that the horror of the sexual abuse will not continue, will stop. So many of the problems that people have in sexual relationships, or people have with eating disorders, or with phobias, have their roots in horror or trauma that can be healed by revealing the basis of it.
It's very dark, except for when something explodes, but we hear voices now. And he pushes me down into some tall grass, and we are laying there very quietly. The people get closer, and they're speaking a language I don't understand, and I'm very scared. Some sort of vehicles coming to with these people. And I said, we can't go back. And he tells me he has to go back. He has to try.
Brave soldier.
And I tell him that he can't leave me there. And he wants me to keep heading out of town to a relative's home in the country, and he's going to take a shortcut back into town. I beg him not to do that. choice. And then I ask if I can go with him. But he doesn't want me to go with him. So he hugs me and he runs off. I'm alone in the grass. And now I'm angry. I'm scared, but I'm angry.
At your brother?
At him and at the whole situation. And so I pick myself up and I head out of farther down the road, staying more in the tall grass, making sure that I'm not seen. And my feet hurt. I don't have shoes on.
So if you had that belief that you were raised in an Eastern European country and you're a peasant and you experienced famine and plague and a lack, then your belief that there's not enough in life not only has its roots in your own personal experience, but culturally as well. So you could come from a cultural belief system that there's not enough to go around, or morality that it's wrong to have too much, it's selfish, you shouldn't do that because, we're peasants or we're socialists and we should share with everybody, we shouldn't take things for ourselves. So there's not only the personal consciousness, the unconsciousness, but there's also the collective consciousness and the collective unconsciousness. So Jung, for example, talked about this a great deal, that there are many things that we share individually, but there are also things that we share collectively as a species that can be healed with past life regression therapy. So if there's an archetype that we have, and Jung talked about archetypes like a higher self or primitive impulses that we have that will speak to us through our dreams and our symbols, often the images that we get in a past life are the archetype, or what he would refer to as a collective consciousness, speaking through us through that lifetime that is giving us an opportunity to find out where are we at in our evolution as a spirit or a being to higher levels of fulfillment and dimension. So in Jung's work, he would use metaphors, symbols, archetypes. Dream work was very critical. People say with the past life, for example, well, Dan, how do you know that person's not making it up? And to me, it does not really matter. What matters are the symbols and the metaphors, the kind of a personality that a person creates, because that, in effect, will create the, how shall we say, the dynamics for the person's belief system, what drama is playing itself out from the unconscious that's trying to present itself, what from the collective unconsciousness is trying to present itself through the persona that the person presents. So if you're a beggar in 13th century France, or you're a king or a queen with a lot of power, and you abuse that power, and you find that in current relationships you abuse your power, whether or not that happened or not, really to me is not that relevant. The fact is that you created that scenario from a collective unconsciousness point of view. It means that you have issues with, perhaps with abundance, might have issues with power or aggression, you might have issues with fulfillment or peace or happiness, you might have issues around what you deserve as an individual. So the persona that comes up during the past life is really a very convenient, if you will, collection of beliefs that you have about what you deserve, and also a collection of what can you do to heal those particular things. The kind soul comes along to take care of that individual. In Jungian terms, that kind soul could be a very real person, but it also could be what we refer to as a higher self or an archetype that says there's always someone there that's available to help you. So as part of the past life work, we work with that. So who in your life is available to help you? Who are the kind souls that you have that can be there? Or if you weren't starving, or if you had enough, how would your life be different? And how can we take what you believe from your past life and transform it to help you get what you need? What resources are available?
Question. If a regression can help an individual, could something like a group regression benefit an entire culture? Answer. To heal a culture, each individual would have to agree to participate. Inevitably, there would be some who would dissent.
Dissent. The answer's getting really complicated. Okay.
So you're going...
So what they're saying is that as far as a culture, okay, through doing a past life regression on a culture, you're going to get dissenters. Okay, the other thing that they're saying is that, granted, let's say that somebody is an African American in this life, okay, it's not as if their last 3, 4, 5 lives were spent as African Americans, and that there is a reason for them to be spending a time as, let's say, an African American in this culture, that there's some reason for their soul's growth. And if whether as an African American they have some kind of a cultural wound, a cultural bias, a cultural hurt that they're carrying, that there is something that that soul is supposed to be learning from that. They're saying as far as doing healing rituals on cultures that are conquered people, like let's say the Afghanis, they say if the people were willing to join together, let's say that there was like a large group meditation where many people on the earth were centered on healing the emotional, physical, whatever cultural wounds of the Afghani people, and they were all willing, to send the Afghanis a lot of light, love, and whatever other kind of energy they needed, it would help to heal the culture. But that very often a culture has to be healed from within by its own spiritual leaders, okay, by the wisdom of who they consider to be spiritual leaders, so that they can grow above that. Aren't you glad that wasn't all spelled out? Mm-hmm. Okay. So they said as far as a group, let's say past life regression, if you do a group past life regression, it's very possible that all the members of that group are not going to be focused on that same past life. So that, as far as healing a cultural wound, they really don't think that's possible.
Question: should children be allowed to be taught about past lives in school, and how might that change education?
Okay. Do you want a board answer, or should I, since they're being very verbatim, I'll tell you what they're saying. As far as past lives in school, that would all depend, since that is at the moment something that I think is a belief system that some may view as being more a spiritual belief system than a verifiable fact. Until it was a verifiable fact, no. For instance, I believe belief in past lives is part of Hinduism, but was forbidden as part of the belief system of the Catholic Church. We had one life and that was it. If there was some acceptance, okay, of past lives, if let's say a parent, or a culture would show an acceptance of a past life, it would certainly help children, because very often children do have memories of past lives that surface, when they're as young as 2, 3, 4 years old. There are documented cases of children that, were somebody else before they passed on, and they went back into the hometown. They, called people that were living there by name. One of them exactly pointed out where he had buried a bunch of gold in a past life. This was over in India. So there have been verifiable cases. I'm digressing. The spiritual answer is that the acceptance of it would be okay. However, encouraging children to remember their past lives at too young an age would, for some, interfere with the development of the consciousness which they need to succeed in this lifetime, and that it therefore would have to be looked at on an individual basis.
It's still nighttime. I see a small home, but I don't think it's anyone I know, and so I don't know if I should go up to the door or not. And the people aren't in the house, they're outside. And they see me, and there's a man with a gun. And the only reason he doesn't shoot me is because he recognizes that I'm a woman. I try to tell him what happened. Door in the ground, and he opens up the door, and his wife comes out. She puts her arm around me, and then she's going to help me find some different clothes, something for my feet. So we go inside very quietly without any lights on, and she actually gives me some of her husband's or son's clothes to put on. And I ask her if she knows my relatives. I don't think she recognizes the name. I'm not sure how far I have to go, though, to get to my relative's home. And I'm starting to worry about my brother, my parents. She tells me I can stay there, but I know that I can't. I have to keep going. She gives me some food, and she tells me to be very careful. And I imagine I only have a couple of hours till daybreak. It's going to be a long journey. I'm not even sure that I want to do it, but I leave anyway.
You're traveling alone?
Mm-hmm.
Any more soldiers?
Not immediately, but I have to make sure that I always have cover, just in case. And I don't hear the bombs anymore.
It stopped? Or too far from them?
I think it's stopped. Although, if I look back, I can see sort of a glow. So that must be fires. I just have this feeling my brother will not survive. Might have been possible for my parents to get out of town, but it's almost daybreak, and I think I'm lost. And so I sit down to rest, and I'm trying to figure out what to do.
Question. How would a cultural recognition of past lives affect legal thought? In other words, could jurors at a murder trial ask the dead victim who the murderer was? Answer. The dead person would have to reincarnate and reach a certain level of ability to communicate by the time the trial was over. Most often this is not possible. Most often. I guess the question was if everybody in this culture believed in a past life system, how might that change or screw up our legal system? Answer. It would no doubt be rectified by clauses. That is, the holder of this asset or credit card, etc., shall not be held liable in future lives for debts incurred in this one. So did we actually contact the dead? Were we reaching a high spiritual source giving us accurate information? Perhaps the would-be scientist in me feels this is an important issue worth resolving, but the philosopher in me believes it really doesn't matter whether it was really a spirit or just Mary's subconsciousness kicking in. The meaning and experience itself has a richness of its own. Before we go any farther into the legitimacy of these practices, we should probably spend a moment looking at what legitimacy is based on. Early history was awash in myths and folklore, superstitions to explain things in the world we couldn't otherwise understand. In ancient Greece, a school of philosophy arose based on the principles defined as logic. Logic used a mathematician's viewpoint of this plus that equals this other. Its landmark contribution was to eliminate the suspicious supernatural element from explanations and base things on what could be seen, heard, or felt with the five ordinary senses, what we have come to call empirical evidence. It was, in essence, an atheistic movement, since all magic and superstition was tied in with religion. Philosophy of this sort almost vanished, at least in Europe, during the early Middle Ages, to be replaced by a new form of Christian superstition. During the Italian Renaissance, the Greek philosophical methods were revived, but with a Renaissance slant to everything. This was further enhanced by the 18th century's Age of Enlightenment and its subsequent Industrial Revolution. For years, people from Eastern cultures, as well as Native American cultures, have had an issue with the scientific method as they saw it being practiced. To them, it was simply another Western cultural affectation as much as anything else. To be sure, science and the technology that has accompanied it has produced astounding things, making civilization attain heights by leaps and bounds. Surely there must be some truth to all the things studied and formulated over the past few centuries. But while science has been a wonderful methodology for the discovery and application of ideas in our world, the point being raised here is that, is it the only way to see and explain the universe? When Christianity, a predominantly Western movement, came into the world, it did so slowly and stumblingly, finding many pockets of resistance until it became the established thing. And then it proceeded with a vengeance to remove all traces of its pagan ancestors. When science came in during the Renaissance, it proceeded at the same pace as Christianity until, during the Age of Enlightenment, when it began to push away the old god of Christianity with the same force. And any hangovers from the pagan past, denounced as idle superstitions already by the Church, became even more discarded once science began to disprove things left and right. But the cultural mindset was essentially the same. The gods of the new replaced the gods of the old. The usual results of this being that any value the old system had got thrown out with whatever was admittedly valueless. In simple terms, the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater. So too was a certain cultural stigma in place. Superstitions were part of the rural experience of uneducated peasants. When a group of nomads emigrated into Europe from the Middle East, particularly from Egypt, hence the name gypsies, they brought with them their magical practices, usually for sale to the gentry, and often in the form of some illusion or provable trickery. The claim of charlatanism to all forms of divination and esoteric arts stuck. This even when practices were legitimate, because gypsies were considered racially inferior in a Europe that was often race-conscious, and these intruders therefore had to be up to no good. The idea that all things psychic are bogus has never left us, and science's disproving, or inability to prove many psychic events real, so far have added to the claim. Where East and West have differed is that science is still at heart an empirical form of thinking. In other words, it means nothing exists unless I can see it, hear it, feel it. And it can't possibly be real unless I can prove it over and over by redoing a simple technique to yield time and again the same results. This works well for physics, mathematics, the physical sciences. The natural sciences are a bit more complicated. But what about a realm where no physical form exists, not even in the smallest subatomic particle? Pure energy without any form whatsoever. Pure consciousness without a single body to inhabit. Is it possible? Or not? How could such a thing be proven by standard scientific technique, which is based on the empirical, based on physical results? Does science even work for this? Or is this totally a realm of pure faith and therefore religion? And what about our laws? Many of our modern laws, at least in terms of criminal trials, work under the same systems of logic and empirical evidence. Would anyone feel comfortable tossing that aside for psychic evidence? I am not suggesting we replace science, or that all superstitions should be once again taken seriously. And certainly science itself is beginning to expand its borders here as medicine begins to accept Eastern methods of healing like acupuncture, even though it can't be explained properly, and that native practices of shamanism are being taken with some legitimacy, even if it is considered largely a cultural expression. But it should be recognized that science, as we have practiced it, is at least in part a Western cultural expression, and that it should be examined as such periodically, and that maybe the universe doesn't necessarily have to answer to scientific method if it doesn't want to. Maybe the universe is bigger and more complicated than we suppose.
It can be very interesting. A lot of times I get pictures of what they're trying to convey, and spirits very often will convey things in pictures, symbols. Like for instance, one time I was like, this woman's husband came through, and it was like he came through with this huge cup of coffee, and indeed he did have a very large, oversized coffee cup, which was very important to him. So, you pick up that kind of stuff from them, sometimes senses of humor, sometimes sadness, okay, depending on how, what surrounded them. Sometimes, like the area around the board will get real cold, and there'll be like a feeling of cold air or a sensation of coldness like around me. Sometimes it might be other people that are sitting in it board. Very often it will start to spell it out, But then the whole answer will come through in my head anyway. Very often it's kind of like part of me is like in another place, and like there's another part that's kind of coming in, but not that whole body takeover. Sometimes there's a really good energized feeling. Sometimes it can feel very drained, all depending on the circumstances, which is why I have a very heavy emphasis on setting up a protective field prior to the session.
How do you feel right now, right after you've done a whole board session?
It was getting tiring towards the end.
Do you feel any effects like the next day?
Sometimes it's a little spacey, or sometimes at a point where you're still like receiving what I would want to call channeled information, spiritual messages more than normal. It can be sometimes a bit of a distraction when you're trying to deal with day-to-day circumstances. It's certainly not a talent for everyone. I think sometimes people think that this would be such a cool thing to do, but it can be very taxing. Again, you have to use a certain amount of discernment. Know what's you, so to speak, and to keep what's you, to keep your own integrity with the whole thing. Certainly it's a very different way to live, but as I said before, I would certainly not promote it for everyone because of the strains that it does entail. And the expectations people have of it too, you know, they think that spirits are going to know everything, and they can be as limited in their scope of knowledge as any of us would find, maybe above our fields of knowledge, but they have their limits just as we all have limits.
Every question I asked over the Ouija board could obviously lead to dozens of more questions on religion, science, politics, etc., but doing so would soon lead to burning out one's medium. Take the notion of when does life begin, for example. In the Jane Roberts material, another well-known medium asked her source that very question. The answer that came back was more or less, it depends. Sometimes the soul grafts itself onto the body at conception, sometimes not until well after birth, or so that source claimed. An answer that, if true, is unlikely to satisfy either pro-life or pro-choice advocates or the law.
I get scared at night. Get up and I'm hiding by a tree, and I hear someone speak very softly. And it's children. They're children, 2 or 3 of them. And they are crying and they're upset, and they too are lost, and they're looking to get back with their parents. So I give them some of the food that I was given, and I try to comfort them, tell them that it's going to be okay. And now it seems like there's a purpose for me to go on, and to not feel sorry for myself, to help them. So we try to figure out where we are and where we should go, and we begin walking. And we're going to stay, we decide we're going to stay in the wooded area. And we're going to go as far south as we can in the wooded area. And there's a boy and 2 girls.
How old are they?
The boy's about 15. Girls are about younger, maybe like 10 and 7 maybe. We stop to rest once in a while, but so we just keep walking. Night comes, day comes, night comes, day comes. And then we reach an open area, very hilly. We don't see a town or a village. Well, we see water, so we rush down to where the water is, and we all kind of just jump in. Feels good.
You're not afraid?
It's not very deep. There's running water running over rocks, and so then we're able to drink it. And once again we sit down and we try to decide what to do from there, because by this point I'm totally confused about where I am and where we're going. I think that we must look for a town or a village. probably look for places to rest. Hide a lot. I'm almost less scared now. I really believe my entire family is gone, but I'm convinced that we're going to be okay.
While various therapists and psychics might be willing to put faith in the evidence presented to support their work, even they would have to admit much of it is circumstantial, and as such will be considered dubious by many professionals. Still, such accounts cannot be dismissed outright. In the age of Isaac Newton and after, empty space was not considered empty space. It was filled with something. This something was called the ether, a sort of indefinable gas that filled up everything between the stars and planets, from which the universe more or less maintained itself and perhaps created itself. Much later on, the ether was replaced by the concept of a complete vacuum. In the current age of quantum physics, the complete vacuum that we know of as empty space is being replaced by a quantum flux. This is the mysterious fabric of space itself at the subatomic level, 1 billion times smaller than an atom, and made up of strange virtual particles and antiparticles that seem to create themselves and just as magically whisk themselves out of existence. This sounds oddly reminiscent of the old ether concept come back to haunt us, in a more clever and sophisticated guise, of course. From this flux, which spontaneously creates matter, whole new galaxies may be forming. Maybe even whole new universes budding off the old one. The universe may be a cluster of many universes, or multiverses, sharing boundaries, interlocking, even passing through each other at some level, much like a collection of soap bubbles. I mention this because theoretical science is just now delving into concepts that seemed to once belong to the alchemist. While this in itself does not prove life after death or spiritual force, that is, being without matter, without a physical base, even at its most gaseous or at the subatomic level, it does teach us to be wary of being too smug about what we know to be the truth. Because, wouldn't you know it, just as soon as we are sure that we can prove there is no such thing as a spirit world, some smartass will come along and invent a machine that proves otherwise. And then all our perfectly comfortable notions about our world will go down the drain.
Why I had these memories, why at a young age I remember them, and why they reoccurred. And I think part of it could be a message that's being sent to me from who I was. Basically a reminder that the world is not particularly right the way it is now. It wasn't then. Similarities between this life and that, I feel are, well, first off, I live in a country yet another country that's in debt. We still are oblivious to poor people and mentally ill people in this country. We live at the expense of our Mother Earth. We are not only not taking care of each other as human beings, but we're also not taking care of the earth enough. I wonder if we're doomed to repeat cycles. If this form of government, this form of society is doomed to fall like the previous. Are we just taking turns up and down on the karmic ladder? The other past life memories have come on rather randomly in my life, either through actually going back to do another regression, hoping to receive more information about one particular life and then popping up into another. Some are weaker, some are stronger. I tend to notice that sometimes they come on depending on, I meet a new individual who becomes a really good friend in my life, and then it takes on different themes or memories from that sort of person that I've met, or I come across something, a book, or a name, or just in my dreams. I'm a different person than who I was previously in those other lives. There may be some similarities, perhaps in the way I dress, or the way I appear, or maybe even in my profession.
You recognize people relatively easily if you feel that you've had a past life connection with them?
Relatively easily, yes. In fact, several people that I met over the summer this last year, I just started talking with them about a past life. Oh yeah, and then they would fill in the gaps. They would tell me, oh, I remember you too.
The guider will ask the person to go to the moment of death or just before death, ask who's around the person or how they might have died, and then to get that feeling of going through the actual death. after they go through the death, they may ask them to go to the bardo, which is the place between lives. And in the bardo, which is a Tibetan term, that person could meet up with one of these people that they experienced during that lifetime. And they may ask that person or ask forgiveness of that person if they've injured them or hurt them, or they may ask them even different things or carry on a conversation and ask the forgiveness, especially if there was someone that they had a problem with. Now, this aspect of forgiveness is very important in a past life because it's there that the person can get a feeling of atoning for whatever they may have done in the past life. Now, everybody is not an aggressor in a past life. Very often a person is a victim, and I found in many past lives that people are more often victims than their aggressor. However, as they go through these lifetimes, there always is some point at which the victim has been an aggressor. And it's that person may want to feel forgiveness for. And after they go through the bardo experience, and this is unique to Dr. Wolger, at least for as far as I know, that you go into the bardo and ask this forgiveness. Very often when a person comes out of that, there's a feeling of relief, there's a feeling of completion, so that this person now has reconciled with that person in their past life, who very often is a person from the present life. And then some questions are asked as the person is drawn out of the past life. You don't just have the person get up. You have the person go through a series of exercises to come to the present. Much like the time machine, they will go through the phases they went through to get into that past life.
So if Amanda can fast forward her life to the end of this particular lifetime, how old is she when she dies? And what does she recall of this lifetime?
I'm in my 60s.
In your 60s?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you?
I'm in a bed. There's several people around.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows I'm going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Including me. And we're talking about remember when stories.
Mm-hmm.
Remembering back to the war days. And I'm remembering how I first met that young man and those two children, those two girls. And they are there with me now.
Mm. There?
And they have families of their own.
Mm. You saved them.
And they saved me too.
They saved you.
We took care of each other. No, they are my family now. That's all there is.
They died.
My brother died and my parents died. And now it's my turn.
Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Are you passing?
First I say my goodbyes to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I tell them that I love them. And I thank them for sharing life with me. And I promise them that I will see them again. And after all we've been through, there's no doubt in their minds that they will. I'm able to let go of the physical light.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom. Peacefulness. Love.
Is anyone greeting you?
Mm-hmm.
Who's there?
My brother. My parents. beings of the light.
So if you could tell them what the most important parts of this past life you just left were, what important lessons that you have to learn, and how, what would that conversation be like?
I had to learn to trust in myself.
Mm-hmm.
To believe in myself. To give to others. That there are some things that are more important than self. And it was a wonderful experience. As hard as it was a wonderful experience.
Yes. Where are they taking you now?
We're just walking forward into the light. I ask if I get to fly soon.
Giving you your wings?
And they're smiling. In due time. Then I just become the light.
You ready to come back?
Sure.
Not convinced? Okay, Jane, if you could slowly, gently, taking all the time you need, release yourself from the light. Let yourself drift safely and slowly, knowing that it's time to come back to your present life, that you will recall exactly what you need, slowly and gently, letting your spirit descend in a center presence within your being. As much time as you need to do that until you feel fully present. Wiggle those toes. Oh, that's beautiful.
Just
What do you
remember
feel?
the camera.
It's a long camera.
Yeah, I'm still here too.
And when they come out, there are questions about, do you recognize this person as having some of the characteristics of a person in your present life? Or do you have a feeling about that person, who that may have been, and what relationship that might be in your present life? And is there anything in your present life that seemed to be a pattern from that life? So there are many questions that can lead the person to speculate about what happened in that past life and how it relates to the present. And that's the value of going through this regression, is getting the person to have a feeling of where some of the emotions, where some of the bodily injuries have come from, or illnesses, how that may have had its roots in the past life.
Well, I would say for myself, because trust issues got brought up
Very
again,
much so.
and
Mhm.
Dan knowing me as Dan knows me, I have trust issues. So, you know, those issues were important for me, and trusting myself and believing in myself. I try not to have expectations. I think if you have expectations, it can ruin it, actually, for you. Every time that I've done this, I've been surprised.
Really?
Yeah, wherever I am, it's like, whoa.
A couple of things are exceptional, Ron. One is the attention to detail and the attention to the emotions of the moment. I mean, truly feeling the lifetime as it's unfolding. And one clearly gets a sense of Jane actually being there. I should say Amanda. I mean, she was Amanda. And she was Jane from afar, but she was really Amanda. And it was clearly something that Jane was experiencing in the moment.
it was unfolding, right before your very eyes. You were living it.
Mm-hmm.
It was remarkable. Other people experience it more as a lucid dream, or they're watching the experience almost as if they're witnessing the life on a camera unfold. And they're describing details of a lifetime, but they're observing it, they're not in it. The goal, I believe, we have is whatever is going to be most helpful to the client. But Jane just beautifully demonstrated the true goal of the past life regression technique, and that is to feel the feelings of a lifetime, to live the lifetime, to experience the lessons as they're unfolding that continue to linger in the present existence. So going back probably until something felt like World War I, maybe into World War I.
I couldn't get a sense, because first I thought it was the 1900s, and then I was, maybe it isn't quite the 1900s.
Yeah. The lessons that needed to be worked on, the closeness and the connection with family, and then the separation and the ability to function without family with the trust that you would be able to do and the confidence that was gained. It was almost as if you might say individuation, separation experience. Leaving home, traveling beyond under very difficult, frightening circumstances, and developing the confidence to do it. There would be, within a Jungian framework, an archetype of developing an individuating self that continues to evolve. It was a very beautiful demonstration of how this is supposed to happen. And so the pieces of the trust and the separation that were accomplished within that lifetime can now be applied within this lifetime, having the confidence that you pulled it off before.
How long does it usually take you to more or less digest what you've just experienced? Does it sort of linger with you for a couple of days after, or?
It has in the past. I'm usually able to process it a little bit quicker now through experience. Probably, it'll probably be about a 24-hour period. Like tonight now when I go home and go to sleep, I'll probably have dreams somewhat about that lifetime, and then start to kind of finish processing it during the day tomorrow, I would say.
Not only are there past lives that have similar themes, but also issues that aren't completed will come up, so it might be a constellation of issues. So, for example, trust issues might present themselves in terms of a relationship, work relationships, marriage, children. And there, again, Jane was there with 2 children, so it might have something to do with caretaking beyond the family or caretaking within the family. So other issues that are undealt with, or other resources as to how to deal with trust issues, will probably surface for you. And that's part of the healing. The things that you forgot that you did well and you accomplished can come to the fore again. And just planting the seed that whatever is needed to heal is readily available and will present itself often happens, and it might take a couple of days.
Lack of evidence does not necessarily mean proof of non-existence. Billions of people on the planet belong to some religion or other at varying degrees of devotion. Are they all wrong? Is this sense that there is a God somewhere and that there is a life after death, either in a heaven or in an unending cycle of redepositing souls into bodies, just a psychological need we as a species have yet to outgrow? Even a president will stand before a crowd and say, "In God we trust," to win a re-election. Such a thing is not considered unscientific. Such things win votes. That must mean lots of people believe in, or hope, there is an afterlife, one that has no physical basis, and probably can't be proved. I don't think we should do away with either science or religion, or discount regressionists, mediums, or people who just say they know their past lives without any form of therapeutic help. But I do think we should move on. Perhaps what is needed is a new science, a meta-science or upgraded metaphysics, that explores the realms of a universe that contains consciousness, energy without matter, a consciousness that lives on long after that last proton has disintegrated trillions of years in the future. And what is needed are religions, philosophies, therapies that are willing to change and keep pace with whatever it is we discover. Maybe such a point will be reached centuries in the future, a point where we will have proven that life after death exists, that we talk to our ancestors on our cell phones, and watch TV shows sent to us from other civilizations in other parts of the galaxy. Then what?
The real value is finding out what did you struggle with, and how does what you struggled with in the past life continue to plague you in the current life. Also, what particular talents or abilities did you begin to develop that can not only help you with those problems, but more positively help you with the assist you with the evolution of your own being, whatever that means for you. We'll look for themes. We'll try to see where those are playing through in the present life. We'll go back in the past life and try to heal them, which incidentally many past life therapists disagree on that. Some believe it's enough to get the image or the thought within the person's mind and have them talk about it. Many of us believe it's important to experience the actual emotions behind the trauma or the pain or the suffering so they can truly be integrated. I tend to be somewhere in the middle. I think for some people understanding can lead to change. Other people need to experience and heal the pain by going through it once again. Not that we want to encourage suffering, but just to help people get in touch with what they're feeling and how it continues to affect them. I'll schedule other sessions with them, and these are typically people I'll work with for a period of time so that the past life information can be integrated into their daily functioning. Often what happens, as occurs with much of the induction work that we do in therapy, is that if I bring back a past life from the 3rd or 4th century or 18th century, what have you, that other memories of that lifetime will come together. Also, other resources that were gathered to deal with that particular issue will come together. So the person might go home and start journaling and find out they have memories of other lifetimes that were very similar to that they had similar themes, and also what they used to do to deal with those issues and what strengths they had to overcome the problems that they had. So it truly can be a lifelong process where a person becomes more in tune with who they are, what they're all about, and can really join in the process of co-creating their own destiny now and also for the future.
I would say if they have some deep problems, definitely should go to a therapist who specializes in regression, because it's safer and it gives the person the kind of guidance they need to get through that and get to release it. If a person is doing this for fun, certainly these self-help books are what they are. They give a person a feeling that they have some kind of control, some kind of power over what's going on in their life, and that's always good for a person because it gives them self-esteem. It depends upon who the person is that has written the book. If the person doesn't have a background in regression work, I would say it's less likely to be as effective as a person who's done many regressions. But if you're doing it just for your own pleasure and then you do hit a snag, you can always get help that way.
What is the point of reincarnation? Why recycle souls through many different bodies over many centuries? So that they learn to be better people? What's important about that? Why create a universe for that purpose? And since the population is exploding, does that mean new souls are being printed up somewhere? Or are they coming from the animal kingdom? Do some of us reincarnate as cats, trees, or ducks? Might this group be your family in a past life? Is your cat really your grandpa? And were we all once dinosaurs? Has anybody remembered a dinosaur past life? Question. Do all living things have souls? Is it a natural outgrowth or evolution of life? Answer. Living things to a greater and lesser degree have spirits or souls. The soul evolves through experiences as plant, insect, small bird, or other animal, etc. Question. What kind of soul might a one-celled animal or bacteria have? Answer. Not much. Did we evolve spiritually from the same sources we did physically? In other words, can we remember past lives as dinosaurs, birds, trees, worms, etc.?
No.
Some people were dinosaurs. Most weren't. Many souls came from other original planetary sources.
I must interject. Are you talking about somewhat like the belief that there were folks from another planet that stopped here on Earth and sort of like pumped our genetic engineering up? And also the belief that perhaps on a spiritual level that there was some immigration from either Sirius or the Pleiades? Okay.
Mary here alludes to hypotheses of interplanetary seeding, wherein some early, highly advanced civilization on one planet visits or sends genetic information or alters in some way the life forms on other planets, creating descendants throughout the galaxy. Speculation has arisen, based on ancient myths and artifacts, that 2 such visits have occurred on Earth, one coming from the direction of the star Sirius, the other from the direction of the Pleiades. Although there is some circumstantial support, there is no proof of this, nor is there proof that there are recognizably habitable planets in these regions of space.
Because they have found that with past life regression, that some people, they get regressed back and they're kind of like falling to Earth on a spaceship. Beats me. It hasn't happened to me.
Question. Do non-living things have souls, from the smallest rock to the largest planet? Answer. Yes.
Well, the stream, yes. Okay. A rock has an energy, perhaps not a spirit, but an energy. Okay. But a stream moves, it has oxygen in it. What they're kind of telling me is anything with oxygen in it, okay, or like a gaseous thing in it to a certain degree achieves soul energy or spirit energy. And it's like what they were kind of showing me before was that like a spirit evolves, and then, eventually you kind of get to be like an oversoul of, like, let's say like an island, okay, and then like perhaps a larger landmass, and then eventually like an oversoul of like a whole planet, and then like maybe a star.
So you get promoted.
Yeah, you just keep going on and on and on. Mm-hmm. It just never ends. Okay. So, you might not be locked into like the earth body stuff, but you might be locked into like some other type of thing.
Question. If we have all had many past lives, did each of us have a very first lifetime, and will each of us have one final life?
They're saying yes, you have to start somewhere.
Answer. One has a final lifetime when they have accumulated knowledge and understanding. But above assets pale compared to wisdom, which is the knowledge and performing of right actions in the daily affairs of the light, despite circumstances the soul encounters.
Do you understand that?
It's fuzzy.
Well, it's kind of like you go through lifetimes being either a man, a woman, gay, straight, black, white, Asian, whatever. Just different knowledge, different perspectives, all this and that. But that it's kind of like the big thing to learn is right action. Okay, you get a lot of knowledge. But the thing about true wisdom is discerning what is the right thing to do in each circumstance. And that is what helps one grow above the need to come back and learn more stuff. Okay? Okay, because there's a need to know when to be compassionate and to be helping, to be understanding, all of that. But also part of what one needs to learn is when to take action. Sometimes there can be some things as being too compassionate, to this, to that. So that's what they're kind of saying. You learn right action, when to take it, and the discernment involved with that.
Question. What happens to everybody after that?
I wonder if they know.
It was at this point that we temporarily lost our connection.
No. Zone. All right. Why don't you start over again? Okay, answering the question, because I kind of lost track there. I spaced. C-O-N. Oh, I wonder if we lost our connection.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
So after the final lifetime, what happens?
Answer. One progresses to another stage of spiritual evolution in the higher planes. If the soul wishes, it may stay for a very long time or forever with the spiritual source of old. It may choose to progress further in soul growth by taking on bigger projects, such as the experience of being a planet or star. Cool.
I suppose. I guess eventually you'd get to have like your whole universe, and that would fit with the expanding universe theory.
Question. Is there a reason for the whole process of reincarnation? Answer. Partially spiritual growth and learning. Some folks just like the earth plane and keep wanting to come back. And finally, I allowed them their say to you in their final words. You may gain much self-knowledge and understanding through past life experiences or regressions, but use it to make this one better. Pray and send energy for peace and understanding between all peoples.
Why go through a past life regression? It's important you have a clear idea of what you'd like from it, where you'd like to go, and what you'd like to explore, and to not totally pin your hopes that this is now going to all disappear. In many cases it does. And then not to hang on to the results, but to move forward in your life, because past life regression is just that. It's a tool. It's a tool to lead you forward, and not to feel, well, now I can go back over that, and I've done this. A one-shot deal may not be the answer. You may have to go through a series before you achieve the results you'd like.
First off, it may not be an extraordinary experience right off the bat. But first of all, whatever you do remember, try to learn from it. I recommend people to research and to find out names and what language or what culture that they have these memories from, which can be kind of tricky at times to discover. Another one is to be prepared for the worst and the best, and hopefully when you go to a regressionist that they'll be able to walk you through the process and let you know what to expect, pretty much. Remember that you have only one soul, and that who you were before is not who you are today, but you have something to learn from that other person, and try to learn and remember as much as you can.
Most therapists have master's degrees, many have PhDs. There's often specialized training in hypnotic states or past life therapy. There are international organizations as well as professional journals that are researching past life phenomenon. There are journals on paranormal psychology, experimental psychology, psychical research that have documented information that can be very useful to help us understand to what extent is this a philosophy or a science, and to what extent can you really believe in this as being a bona fide way of receiving help. You want to make sure that the person that you go to has credentials that, again, can make you feel safe and secure, that they know what they're doing, that they're not taking you on an adventure that could at some level hurt you or to put you into a state that you may not be able to recover from or could cause you psychological suffering. More importantly, it's important to realize again that the real value comes in getting to know yourself differently at multiple levels: personal consciousness, unconsciousness, collective unconsciousness, and have a willingness to grow and see the past life regression as an opportunity for you to expand your wellness and integrate who you are into giving yourself the life that you'd like to lead.
Perhaps a better way to look at it, for the average person, the non-scientist, the non-clergyman, is to think in terms of what if. What if you and I did have hundreds of past lives? What if we will go on having more lives for thousands, maybe millions of years, changing bodies like we change our clothes? It's all still you and me, but the setting is different. And maybe we remember those past lives, and maybe we don't. And maybe it helps us, and maybe it doesn't. And maybe you'll just keep on bumping into your dead friends and loved ones over and over again, in other lives, and that bardo in between. And maybe you'll make new friends as well. And maybe you'll be around 6 billion years in the future when the sun, in its dying act, incinerates the earth. You may no longer be human, and you certainly will no longer be earthbound, because life on earth would have been made impossible by then. But what if? And what if you knew all this as a fact? And knowing that, decided what use you would make of that knowledge? What if you knew, for a fact, that you had all the time in the world? How would your life be different today? Be ever with the light.
I have to bring up my favorite quote from Gladiator. Yeah, I'm a Russell Crowe fan, sorry. Where Maximus says, what we do in life echoes in eternity. And I not only just believe in that, but I know it. And it really makes you appreciate what you have now, what's going on in this life now. I mean, in many ways, my life now is much better and much happier than previous lives, less rougher, but it still isn't easy. I still have a lot of learning and development to go through. And that's just a reminder of that, too. So.
Just so you know, there was no Maximus.
Okay.
Gladiator was total bullshit.
I know, totally. But that quote is my favorite quote.